Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Emerge Live Unfiltered Conversation, where we are going to be talking about 7 secrets to building a successful brand. 7 simple secrets to building a successful brand because it does take work, and it's not necessarily easy, but it is simple if you follow the instructions and the keys that I'll be sharing in tonight's live. So, as people are coming in, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself real quick, and then we're going to jump right in because I want to be mindful of people's time. So I am Julian B. Kiganda. I am the founder of Emerge Live, which I'll be talking about a little later, as well as the Transformational Brand Strategist at JVK Brand Design, where we are passionate about telling culturally relevant stories that bring to life the soul of a brand in an unforgettable way. So, as you're coming in, if you could go ahead and just introduce yourself, let me know where you are coming in from. Let me know your name. I always like to welcome folks into the live. This is an interactive session. So just make sure that if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. And usually on these lives, we get some interesting conversations going in the chat. So I would love for you all to participate in that way. Oh, excuse me. And one of the first things I like to do when I'm talking about branding is get real clear about what the definition is because everybody has a different definition of branding. And I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the presentation. If you're coming in, please go ahead and post your name and where you're coming in from so I can welcome you. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you're watching the replay, definitely feel free to comment on this live as well, because we do go back and read the comments and try to respond to any questions afterwards. So, 7 simple secrets to building a successful brand. I love branding. I love all things branding. Branding is just what I do. So, a little bit about me. As I mentioned, Julian B. Chiganda. I have been doing this for over 20 years, just building purpose-driven brands. An award-winning designer. I'm also the author of Whose Shoes Are You Wearing? 12 Steps to Uncovering the Woman You Really Want to Be. I co-authored that book with my sister, Christine St. Ville. I have worked with clients everywhere from individual entrepreneurs to large corporations, help clients land multi-million dollar sponsorships, sell out events, and successfully launch books. One thing that a lot of people may not know about me is that I am actually a professional performing artist. I actually grew up traveling around the US, performing East and Central African dance. And interestingly enough, that exposure to culture is something that I actually infuse into the work that I do with my clients. And that's why I'm so passionate about creating culturally relevant brands that really connect with your audience. So, welcome, Linda from South Carolina. Thank you for joining. As I mentioned, if you have any questions during the live, please feel free to share those and I will answer those as we go. So the first question is, what is branding? And if you have an idea of what your definition is of branding, please go ahead and post it in the chat. I always like seeing what other people say branding is. There's different definitions depending on who you talk to. But I like to keep it really simple when it comes to branding. And what I say branding is the public's perception of your product or service, i.e., your reputation. So I know a lot of times you'll hear people talking about branding and they'll be talking about the logo or they'll be talking about your public relations or your social media platform, all of those things, right? So branding is all of those things and none of those things is what I like to say, because all of those things individually do not make up a brand, but all of those things together do effectively make up your reputation, i.e., your brand. And this is actually a quote from Steve Forbes, editor of Forbes magazine. And I would agree with the statement that your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business. And I'll tell you, it's probably more important now than ever just because there's so much more competition. Consumers and clients have so much more access to different options. So you want to make sure that your brand is standing out amongst all of those other companies. And one of the best ways to do that is through creating a very distinct brand. And I think the thing that is really important to remember is that great brands do not happen overnight. Great brands do not happen overnight. All of these brands that you're seeing here, three of them actually don't even have a word to go with them because just their symbols are enough to tell you what the brand is, right? So you got Apple, you got Nike, you got Target. Those brands have invested so much in their branding that they don't even need any text to go with them. You just know the brand from their logo or their icon. And then Louis Vuitton and Lexus, again, all brands that have invested heavily into their brands. So, the first secret of building a successful brand is be authentic. Decide that you're going to make authenticity and transparency part of your reputation and watch how it translates into long term success. And there are some great brands and examples that have done this really well. Two of them, if any of you follow Wendy's on Twitter, I don't know that they're as live as they used to be on Twitter because I know a lot of people left Twitter after it became X. That's a whole other thing. That's just mixed up branding right there. We're not going to get into that right now. But Wendy's on Twitter was one of my favorite brands to follow because their voice, they had a very distinct voice. And listen, they threw shade on everybody, but you couldn't help but love it because they were quick with the comeback. And that's one reason even if you don't eat fast food, I don't do fast food, but I loved just following Wendy's on Twitter because they always had something crazy to say. And then Harley Davidson is another great example of a brand that is authentic. If you think about Harley Davidson, they have a very clear customer demographic and they authentically speak to that demographic through their visuals, through their messaging, through their customer experience. So those are some examples of great brands. And I'll tell you, this next one is probably one of my favorite examples of being authentic with a brand. And listen, we all love Auntie Tab. Here's the thing, like if any of you have ever heard her story, you probably know that she actually didn't really start, her career didn't start taking off and she had been in the industry, trying to act for years. Her career did not start taking off until she started becoming just who she was and just talking like the Tabitha Brown now. And she actually talks about this. She writes about this in some of her books. But I think she's a great example of how being authentic to who you really are can really pay off big for your brand. And here's the thing about authenticity when it comes to branding. This is part of why it's so important because people are so much more mindful of how they interact with brands, about the brands they support. So authenticity has become such an important part of being a successful brand. In fact, 88% of consumers say authenticity is important when deciding what brands they like and support. And I will tell you, millennials and Gen Xers, they can see through all of the bull. So authenticity is going to become even more important, I think, with brands. The second secret of building a successful brand is be clear. With all the choices that your audience has, it's so important that your message is simple but compelling. And let me tell you something. I have seen so many websites and marketing material that say a lot of nothing. And so this is where you want to be really careful and not use a lot of technical jargon because that can really make you sound confused and boring. And nobody, they say a confused customer doesn't buy, and that is so true. So just make sure you take the time to craft a message that speaks clearly to your brand's mission. Here is a great example of a brand that does that really well. Nike, just do it. In terms of just being clear, like that tagline has taken Nike, years, right? Like they own that tagline, just do it. And it's clear. It tells you that they are all about taking action. It is active footwear. And of course, now they've expanded, but their messaging is just incredibly clear and simple. Here's an example of what not to do when you are creating messaging for your brand. So, we're talking about being clear. We want to be really mindful of even our elevator pitch, right? So, these are two examples from two very different websites. And if you read the first one, I know I could not figure it out because it had a whole lot of words and said a whole lot of nothing. The second one made it very clear who their customer was and what problem they solve. We help female entrepreneurs build powerful brands online, creating the platform they need to grow and prosper. So think about how you can make your branding message even more clear. In fact, they say you're supposed to write it so that a third grader would understand it, right? The third secret is be passionate. Let passion drive your brand. Now, Zappos at one time was a really popular brand. And unfortunately, when the founder passed several years ago, I think that actually really affected the brand because he was the brand, right? He was very passionate about the brand. He prioritized the customer experience. His book was even called Delivering Happiness, a path to profits, passion, and purpose. And this actually is a big part of why Zappos reached 2 billion in revenue and was ultimately acquired by Amazon. So when you are building your brand, look at how you can infuse passion into what you do. And here are some of Zappos ads. As you can see, they have a lot of action, a lot of activity. You can see the passion in their brand. The fourth secret is be different. Listen, Apple has this down. Learn from Apple. So when Apple first came out, they were competing with, if some of you all remember, those computers that just had a black screen and green text that blinked on top of it. Very different from what we have now, right? There was no way I would be doing this live on one of those older computers. And Apple actually innovated and created what they call a WYSIWYG computer. And WYSIWYG just means what you see is what you get. So what you actually created on screen was what you got, whether it was images, whether it was text. So they were revolutionary. And they almost went out of business when they had some internal turmoil, but they were able to actually innovate out of almost going into bankruptcy by introducing the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. And to this day, they're still innovating. And here are some of their ads. Their tagline was actually think different for quite some time. And so take a page from Apple's book. I always say, just because you're small doesn't mean that you have to look small. So all of these things that I am sharing, you can definitely implement them into your own brand, into your business, and find ways to constantly innovate. The fifth secret is be engaged. So, one of the best examples of this was Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey, his 2013 election, where he used social media to really connect with his constituents. He made sure he was always engaging, addressing issues on Twitter, establishing a very strong brand value. And he actually made history by becoming New Jersey's first African American senator. And actually, to this day, if you go on Cory Booker's Twitter page, he has 4.7 million followers. And those followers are extremely engaged. So he has stayed consistent with that engagement over time. And so I am intentionally sharing both business brands and personal brands because all of these tips and practices, they apply to both. So whether you're building your business brand, all of us have a personal brand, whether or not we're intentionally building it. These are all things that you should look at applying in your own business or your brand. The sixth secret is be in the know. Successful brands stay updated on industry and global trends, as well as changes in customer preferences. And here's the thing, ignoring trends can make brands irrelevant really fast. So if you all remember Blockbuster Video back in the day, for those of us who knew life before Netflix, Blockbuster, there was a Blockbuster in every neighborhood. People always going to Blockbuster, getting their videos, half the time not returning them. But here's the funny thing: Blockbuster was actually approached by Netflix to join, or I think to be bought out, and they refused. They did not pay attention to the trends. And so I think there's only like one Blockbuster Video left in the entire country, and that's more of like a nostalgic type store. So this is why it's so important to stay in the know and stay on top of industry trends, because if you don't, you will become irrelevant really fast. And so one of my absolute favorite resources for staying on top of trends and paying attention to what's happening with consumers globally, because you should be having a global outlook. We're although we sometimes feel like we're in a bubble here in the US, we are absolutely impacted by what goes on globally. And I think we're just so much more connected now. So definitely trendwatching.com, one of my absolute favorite sites to go to. Make sure you take that down and take note of that website, because that'll keep you in the know with what's happening with all kinds of industries and trends globally as well as locally. So check out that site and stay in the know. And then the final secret of building a successful brand is be consistent. Consistency is extremely important when you're building a brand. And here's the thing: I have worked with a number of clients where their website looked different from their business card, looked different from their social media platform, looked different from their branding and marketing materials. It was just all over the place. And so the thing that I would emphasize, if you look at a brand like Target, anywhere you go, anything you see, you automatically know that's Target, because they are consistent across every platform: web, in store, their mailers, everything that they do is branded consistently. And that's because consistent branding absolutely affects the bottom line. So Sephora is another brand that does this really well. All these large brands, they do this really well in terms of staying consistent, because they know that consistency can actually increase their revenue by 10 to 20%. That's a really important stat to remember when it comes to staying consistent with your brand. And then also, when you're looking at consistency, you also want to think about the colors that are connected to your brand. So the thing is, consumers are 81% more likely to recall a brand's color than to remember its name. So think about all of those things and be intentional when picking color for your brand, because every single color has its own meaning. And this is one of the things that we do for our clients, is really walk through which colors work best for their vision, their message, their brand personality. It's a lot of things that go into making that decision. And then I want to call out a couple of brands who are actually clients of mine, where we work with them to actually create their brand and help them be consistent. And they've really just taken it and ran with it. One of them is Lisa Medley, a good friend and a client. She is a phenomenal executive coach. And we started working with her about 4 or 5 years ago to develop her logo. We actually just relaunched her website last year, and also created a whole suite of products related to her executive coaching brand. Hey, Lisa, there you are. Yes, I'm calling you out because you've been doing an amazing job with your brand. I love to see it. And this shirt that she's wearing and this saying, "I belong on the call, in the room, at the table." Love, love, love this saying. I actually have a copy of that journal for myself, and I keep that statement on my desk because it's such a great reminder, and it tells you why it went viral. And you can also see to the right, she was actually, her products were featured, Lisa's products were featured on Tabitha Brown's Very Good Mondays, where she shouts out and shares products from small businesses to help them grow. So Lisa, you have been doing, you honestly, I'm not just saying this, you've been one of my favorite clients because you've been doing the thing, like, and doing it right. So thank you for that. And then another client we had the honor of working with was Iana Banzant. She had actually approached us about creating a new brand for her masterpiece bath and body line of products. So, in addition to creating the brand, we also redid her entire website. We created packaging for the new brand. We did a whole campaign. It was a holistic approach to really rebranding her masterpiece brand. And this project was just a lot of fun to work on. And she was just a great client to work with. So, just to recap, and if you haven't, make sure you take a screenshot of these points about 7 simple secrets to building a successful brand. So, number one, you want to be authentic. Number two, you want to be clear. Number three, you want to be passionate. Number four, you want to be different. Number five, be engaged. Six, be in the know. And seven, be consistent. If you do all of those things, I promise you, and you stick with it. I promise you, you are going to be. And of course, there's other things that go on in the background, on in the background of building a successful business. That the brand actually helps to grow. But in terms of branding itself, all of these things are important to actually be woven into the culture of the business. And yes, Linda, I agree. I never tire of her wisdom. She is incredibly superior and yet balanced compassion. Yes, she's incredible. She really is incredible. And I want to just leave you with this, that what makes you unique makes you successful. I think there's so many times that we will see, somebody doing something really interesting online. We're like, oh, how can I incorporate that into my brand, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with getting inspiration from other places, but I have seen, and I've actually been on the receiving end of people copying my brand or trying to. Because here's the thing, if you're an original, nobody can really do it the way you do it, right? All they can do is copy it, but they don't necessarily have the soul to go behind that. So just remember and really think about what makes you unique and what makes you that's the thing that will make you successful. So if you are interested in learning more about how you can work with my company, or how we can help you really level up your brand to grow your sales, to grow your customer base, to grow your followers. That's something that we also do, social media marketing. Definitely get in touch, info@jdkbranddesign.com. And then follow us on all socials at JBK Brand Design. If you're not following our page already, make sure you do that, because we always try to share really useful information and tips on our platforms that can help you grow your brand. And the other thing I want to make sure you do is that you tune in next Wednesday, because let me tell you, this conversation is going to be fire. So, in our next Emerge Live Unfiltered conversation, I am going to be having an incredible talk with, her name is Kate Byrne. So, she is a venture capital expert, and she's also the co founder of The Toolbox. And if any of you watched our live last week with Viola Llewellyn, who is incredible, this is Viola's partner in The Toolbox. And she really, let me tell you something. I just met her recently, this Kate Byrne. This conversation is going to be fire. She is one of those people, we talk about allyship, right? So she's one of those people who doesn't just talk about it. She's actually about it in terms of doing the things that are actually going to elevate and uplift um, people in underrepresented and economically disadvantaged communities. So I'm super excited about this. You can go to our page. This event is actually already available for you to RSVP on the JBK Brand Design LinkedIn page and on Facebook. We're also streaming live on YouTube. And yes, Jacquay, hey, how you doing? Thank you for joining. I'm looking forward to working with you as well. And thank you, Lisa. But this is going to be a really interesting conversation, especially with everything that we know is happening around affirmative action and diversity and inclusion and all of the things, right? All of the things. So it's going to be an interesting conversation because I'm looking forward to hearing her perspective on, why diversity and inclusion is important and even why she decided that that was going to be one of her values when it came to how she does her work. And you all, this lady is incredible. She's accomplished. Definitely make sure you join us for this conversation. The last thing I want to share, which is near and dear to my heart, this April 19th to 21st, 2024, my team and I are hosting Emerge Live, and we are inviting you to rediscover joy. So, this experience is for visionary Black women who are looking to uncover purpose and rediscover joy. Because, listen, we have been through it. We have been through it. And I recognize that we need a safe space where we can connect, where we can heal, where we can learn and grow. And honestly, like it's going to be all about joy. Like we are here to rediscover joy. And I definitely would encourage you to check out the website. We're updating it. So not all the speakers are up there yet, but it'll give you a good idea of what to expect at the experience. General registration ends on the 29th. That's right. This is a leap year. And we have some pretty amazing speakers. So there were some clues in the branding presentation that I just gave in terms of some of the speakers that will be at Emerge Live. And we'll be making some more announcements and you'll be seeing some media around it. But I encourage you, if you are in a place where you're like, life has been lifing and you just need a safe space to just connect, let your hair down, to breathe, and just be surrounded by amazing women and incredible experiences like our African dance class that we're going to be hosting, like our immersive sound bath session. You all are in for a treat. So check out emergeliveexp.com. Definitely message me on LinkedIn or wherever you're connecting with me if you have any questions. And I look forward to having some of you join us at Emerge Live. So I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. If you have any questions, I can stay on for a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions about anything I shared or just any questions, general questions about branding, I am happy to answer those questions. But this is also going to be available. This video is also going to be available on both our Facebook, our YouTube, and our LinkedIn page as a replay. So you can always go back and listen to it. So definitely make sure you do that. Let me know in the comments what was the most insightful or interesting thing that you got from learning about this. Oh, thank you, Keisha. How are you? Yes, Black women do need this experience. Absolutely. Listen, that's why we're doing this. Like this is I'm very passionate about this. I'm extremely passionate because it's the experience I needed when I was going through my own stuff. And I do want to mention we do have some updated pricing. If you've been on our website, we have some updated tickets because we wanted to provide additional options that people were asking us about. To register for this experience. I'm a full-time caregiver. Yes, business owner, mom of 5. You know what, Lisa? There's so many women that I have been speaking to recently, and we know this, right? Like there's so many people going through stuff, but you would never know it by just watching what they do on social media, right? Because we know that social media, those are the highlights. Like those are the highlights of what's going on in our lives. People don't really know what's going on in the background. And a lot of people definitely didn't know, except for the fact that I just shut down. I didn't do anything on social media for almost all of 2022. Most people did not know, and probably to this day are not necessarily aware. I have been talking about it that I attended 6 funerals in 2022. That was just it was a defining moment in my life. And people, again, most people didn't know what I had been going through because we're good at masking those things. And so Emerge Live is really a space where we can take off those masks, where we can truly connect, be in a beautiful space, right? Because the hotel is right on the water. That was very intentional. And our goal with Emerge Live is that no woman who attends is going to leave the same way she came. So even if you say this may not be for you, or you're not available, please share this with somebody else, another woman who could really use this experience. We have an amazing team that's looking forward to welcoming all of our sisters in April. And if there are no questions, I am going to say good night. And listen, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. We did that in 30 minutes. We did that in 30 minutes. Usually when we do these lives, it's closer to an hour, but that's mostly because I'm interviewing someone and there's just something about hearing people's stories. So make sure you tune in next week. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for joining. I hope you found this useful. Feel free to share with other folks who may be working on building their brands and trying to figure out where they start. These are really some clear and critical fundamental principles to follow when building your brand. And if you are looking for help, definitely reach out and connect. I am looking forward to meeting some of you in April and hopefully working with some of you in the future. So I'm going to say good night. Have a great evening. Tune in next week. We are here every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. EST. And we're having these unfiltered conversations so that we can help you grow and inspire you to become what and who you were intended to be. So, if there's any topics that you are interested in hearing, definitely feel free to also send those my way, inbox me because this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to stay consistent with this, right? I'm going to practice when I preach it. But thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate you spending your time, and I will see you all next week. Have a good night.